Now, Peter, Jesus is saying, thou art Peter. And I like it in Hebrew. In Hebrew, that Peter is Petros. And in Greek, sorry. That Petros means a rolling stone. And he says, you are Peter. In other words, if you are looking at a rolling stone, now, let's say you were walking on foot. And as you walk, and someone kicks the stone, and that stone comes your way. And when it comes your way, it becomes a stumbling block. You can even fall because of that rolling stone that comes to you. Now, Jesus is saying to him, even though you have power as the son of Jonah, but you have the ability to be a stumbling block because you are a rolling stone. Now, this is sin. If you are looking at the book of John, there, I think it's John chapter 13, Jesus is saying, I'm going home. And Peter says, no, you can't go. Where are you going? And now, Jesus said in the previous chapters, I am the good shepherd, and I lay down my life. Now, Peter is saying, no, you can't lay down your life. I will lay down my life for you. Therefore, there he became the stumbling block to the way to salvation. Remember, I said, when Jesus was talking to the disciples in this passage, he was actually mapping up a way for him to be in the kingdom, to go to the cross for them. Now, Peter is trying to stall him not to go to the cross. Therefore, even though he is someone with power, that power makes him to be a rolling stone, that stone which is able to make people to stumble on. Now, Jesus then is saying, thou art Peter, or thou art Petro, if I may put it that way. You are a rolling stone. However, upon this Petra, I will build my church. All right? You have Petro, which is a rolling stone, and therefore God will never be able to build a house on a rolling stone. He will never be able to build a church on a rolling stone. Therefore, Peter is a rolling stone. Now he turns and says, upon this Petra will I build my church. Now Petra becomes the rock. It becomes the solid foundation. It becomes the chief cornerstone when you talk about Petra. Now Jesus is that Petra. Upon this Petra. Now the Bible puts it nicely, and I want us to really look at this. The Bible clearly says the foundation that God has put to build his church on, it is the chief cornerstone, and that foundation is Christ himself. But I'm going to talk more about that later. Now, I want us to look at the Bible interspersed with passages that are referring to God as the rock. If you were to read Genesis 49, verse 24, it tells you that God is the rock. If you were to read 1 Samuel 2, verse 2, you will get the same sense that God is the rock. If you were to read a number of passages in Psalm, but I've just quoted just one Psalm here, assembled few of them. You have a number of verses that are talking about this. In Psalm 92, it's talking about God the rock. But I've also picked up that the Bible is not only referring to God as a rock. There are instances where it refers to human beings as rocks. For instance, if you were to read Isaiah 51, verses 1 to 12, you would pick up that there the Bible talks about Sarah and Abraham, and it talks about them as a rock. Now, you are able to pick this up, but the difference between God as a rock and human being as a rock, human being is always having tendencies of rolling as a rock, but God has tendencies of being solid as a rock. Therefore, you cannot compare the two rocks, even though the Bible does use the same things as I've indicated. Now, Jesus is saying, upon this rock, upon this Petra will I build my church. And when I say that, the Bible is very clear in 1 Corinthians 3, verse 11. No one can lay another foundation except that which is Christ. Therefore, if you are saying Peter was a foundation that was laid, then that would be against the scripture itself, because the scripture needs to interpret itself. Therefore, the scripture says the only foundation of the God's church is Christ himself. And therefore, the other important thing is, when you hear about foundation, it depends what do you mean. The solid foundation is Christ, but you do have forerunners of Christ, which the Bible also puts them as foundation. It puts your apostles, it puts your prophets as foundations, but they are not the foundation upon which God has actually built his church, because the cornerstone of the church, the solid rock of the church, it is Christ. It is not the apostles, it is not the prophets. However, because apostles and the prophets were very important, in heaven you would pick up that they are prominent in the gates of heaven, because they were prominent in the church here where we are.